just to get too sloppy. Things I showed you, I can't try me. Ooh, after the daylight, it started in a hotel. Some ice cold drinks in this dark room. We went from a high school friendship to some postcard actions. Saw some sweat fall off your face into the dance floor, babe. Dance on, babe. Sweat falls off my face inside. Stand up, babe. Stand up. It's nights like this we're wide awake. It's times like this you shy away from me, babe. Started in the hotel lobby, cleaned up just to get too sloppy. Things I showed you, I can't try me. After the daylight, it started in a hotel.
Open eye, feel the waves cut through me. Hypnotized by the sounds I'm breathing in. Hold tight, chemicals collide. Hold tight, hold tight, hold tight. Dripping lights paint the skies, all because of you. Dripping lights paint the skies, only you can make me move. You can make me move. Can make me move. You can make me move. Can make me. So alive, make it last forever. Stop in time, yeah, I'm surrendering. Hold tight, chemicals collide. Hold tight, hold tight, hold tight. Dripping lights paint the skies, all because of you. Dripping lights paint the skies, only you can make me move. You can make me move. Can make me move.
Welcome back, everybody, to the SCL. We're here with more Valorant action, and we're back with the same team we just saw face a loss on Bind, and we're heading to a very interesting map. Not any of our go-to options or gentleman agreement maps here, Dallas. We're going over to Lotus, of all maps, of all places.
Yeah, I mean, and wild in its own right, considering that even then more so kind of, I love these best of ones a little bit. I mean, I understand a lot of teams, even you and I were accustomed to best of threes, a lot of things be looked at. But regardless, doing these best of ones, I love seeing these kind of cider maps always being available and always being there. Two sides of the coins, obviously, to this. Knowing that obviously you'll see some people go ahead and just kind of lay it out and be like, all right, let's go ahead and shake it up and let's go to Ascent. I'm not going to mind. Whenever you see these teams say, you know what, we're throwing all that out the wind. We're going to Lotus. We're going to go over to Pearl. We're going to go to Fracture. We're going to go to, Sunset, the new map. It's always these kind of twist ups where you actually get to see like these teams, which feels really nice, kind of have this definitive agreement between each other that we know this to a certain degree. And it should go ahead and lay a foundation for a good game across the board, knowing that especially this could be a specialist pick for Kentucky here. Know that they're kind of haven't really had the best of the season, but knowing that we haven't really played a map like this too much, this could be that point and that kind of ace up the sleeve for them to say, okay, we have a chance. We can actually continue this run, defeating an opponent who has a polar opposite entire record as we do.
Yeah, I mean, and they've obviously shown they can bleed, and quite profusely at that, right? They completely hemorrhaged the second half and the ending of the first half against their opponent in Niner Esports. And yes, Niner Esports is an exceptionally talented team, but it doesn't mean that a team who made it through into playoffs in the first place with a very solid record in the main season and had a good first game against UGA Red can put up a scoreline like that against Niner Esports and be happy at the end of the result. So whether or not this is a bad day or down day or just, they got a really unlucky matchup, it's hard to say, but this is the best case scenario for Kentucky, right? They're facing an opponent that's coming off a big loss. Their mental is already chalked, and you got to pray that they're the type of people who take that mental hit and just stay down, because if they're the type of people who get angry, who get mad, who get heated in the field, yeah, you guys are going to have a very tough game ahead of you, especially in a map like Lotus, where it really comes down to those ego swings sometimes around these corners. And if you feed the beast is going to eat.
You're talking about the likes of Louise and Tech, like they're a full squad of duelists in terms of the mental. But still, I mean, regardless, there's a lot to be negotiated here. And even then, I mean, with them retakes, I highly doubt it. Regardless, though, when it comes to Lotus, man, I mean, it's totally different. I mean, obviously, the map flow to it is a 3-site map. You take it a little bit slower there towards the start. It actually kind of plays in their play style, but we know some bind a little bit, which is a little struggling, I'd say, for that last map. As you mentioned, it comes down to mental resilience. As you mentioned, and we also got to talk about at the very beginning of this entire broadcast, is how, as you mentioned, Kentucky does have that leg up. They get to watch that broadcast go underway. They get to see that game, kind of take some notes. They got at least 5 good rounds of back-to-back gameplay, understanding we can hit their strides. Who's the big target threats? What are these players going to look like? How are they going to allocate themselves in places? And really, what's their mental looking like? And what are their stances? What are their defaults? How do they like to play this game? And how can we go ahead and kind of adjust ourselves and talk about this and gather some info to say, look, this is relevant to today. How do they slow down, better yet, during those rounds they started to lose? How is the economy really setting them apart? How many times did they force? There's a lot of things that could have really written down for a specific game like this to have on a piece of paper somewhere and say, look, if we take a timeout, we just look at that, go right back to it, because they should be in some kind of a form here that they can't really break at this point because they're already in their playing form today.
I'll say it like this here, Dallas. Who here in the SEL decides the games? Because it's supposed to be us, and then we almost never actually be the ones to bring it forward.
It's the players, because every single one of the teams on a reschedule, we can't do our jobs.
That's actually real as well. Yeah. That's actually real as well. I want to point out, look at the advantage you mentioned. I didn't think about it before. That UKY, that Kentucky are going to have going into this, having just watched Louisiana Tech play. Even if there hasn't been a VOD for your opponent previously in the season, you don't even have to worry about VOD reviewing, because you can just watch it live in the action and unfold and digest that information with your team. And if Kentucky didn't take advantage of that, despite their game having already been decided and they've been waiting on it since the beginning of that last series, honestly, they would deserve a loss, right? This is such a huge advantage that's been given to them, being in the lower round first. Yeah, having faced the loss, another loss shocks you out of the SEL entirely, but you have the advantage of watching that series, evolving your play style, and trying to pick a map that you think would work really far against them. And it is kind of guesswork to a degree, but it also can really help you out. And LA Tech need to be aware of that. They needed to pick something. Honestly, the game can be won in the map ban and veto phase, and we got to hope that they survive it for both sides so that this map stays entertaining.
We can also see relative kind of counters come through in games being won to some sense inside these agent selections. When you talk about maybe a Viper and a Yoru as a little bit of a counteraction, as that kind of walking UAV to kind of play off the back of it, there's a lot of chances that can be made here. But I was going ahead and I had my eyes on that Gecko the entire time, waiting for that thing to be locked in. But immediately, Buey right there towards the end makes the decision, said, oh yeah, I'm a Sentinel player, so we're going to go ahead and make that selection instead. So already going away, we got the compositions, and well, what else do you really expect? We do have somewhat of a switch up here. We see that double controller coming with the Omen and the Viper on with just one side, and then we see the double initiator coming out from Kentucky. So obviously a little bit of differential here, not too much of an actual shift though, because it just comes down to the breach and it comes down to the Viper and what he can provide, which I got to say, Viper almost feels like a relative necessity on this map because of how many walls that wall can cut off, with how kind of, you can see how widespread this map is. It's like a sedan, and it's insane. So, I mean, the Viper wall provides so much, and it can lock down C pretty darn easily if that's what you're looking up. But on the attacking side, it also goes ahead and sets up these avenues, creates these walls, as we see right there towards U-Haul and Vine more times than not, and kind of what things you're looking to cut off for yourself to find maybe free entry to site, or kind of alleviate some tension to play for those rogue plays. So already looking to see what's going to happen away into round one, knowing that we do see that kind of big investment going towards the B site. This is something we don't really see all that often, so I'm excited to see really the accumulates from
There.
Round one gets started, and the attacking side of LA Tech will start to peruse their options in through Central and work over towards Door, possibly to C, and more so specifically in towards B, considering they left their KJ back over towards the C lobby side and anticipate they'd go towards B, but I think they heard the noise out towards Mound, so they'll just swing into the B site more specifically. They do not want to test Door, but that does cut off the rotation back in by your KJ, and Jeeton is there. Twofer for the solo, still not dusted yet. They'll flank in, take down maybe their doppelganger. No, it's Wall on the hit list, and down goes 3 for the side of Kentucky Blue. Huge play in, but Buey joins on the same stat sheets. The KJs are popping off in this round, and Jeeton will require an ace to come up with the win for his squad. Isolates down Buey, denies the 4K for them. Jeeton, one, tans, and he gets it! The ace in round one, and LA Tech are angry after the first series loss.
Well, at least Jeeton is. We can say that much for sure. I don't know about everybody else, but hey, just to know, I'm sure everybody's screaming, everybody's got the confetti just poppers going off saying, look, we won a round finally. And sure, it's taken a good long while, but it's also a different series. You know, you're starting things off with a very, very good boost of confidence. Knowing that Kentucky Blue, they're kind of coming to this thing fresh, they can go ahead and just kind of brush things off. LA Tech has already kind of dug that hole for themselves to know they can find some equilibrium and be reminded that, hey, this is a fresh start. Don't really worry about it too much. Right back to square one. We're in the lower bracket now, and that resilience is at least showing up for one of the players thus far, and that's a good telltale sign to know what we can see for the rest of the series if they continue that kind of momentum.
Big boy gun on the board for LA Tech. I'm really curious more specifically about what Jeeton's brought on the board. You get 5 kills, you're gonna be a little bit flush for cash here in the second round. And the team is really engaging as if they're all flush with cash. And it's gonna be interesting to see how that evolves going into round 3 as well. And considering they're more likely not gonna face losses of life in this round. Sarko, not far behind the rest of the team, but lagging behind considering they're holding Spike. That's the right idea. Dark cover to close off Hall, connecting in towards the A side, and they'll close off top of Rope, creating an option now for Sarko to plant this in default right by Door, but they're holding back for the time being. They'll play instead all the way in for Tree. They want to make sure they can defend this from multiple angles, but this is easily retakeable by Kentucky Blue if it wasn't for the fact they're limited in weapons.
Yeah, I mean, just not really can do much in a sense like this. You got to make sure to watch for the crosses, and you don't really have the weaponry for that, but you are going to see these kind of lineups going ahead and being detected. You can already see Doug kind of going in, look back towards main, having intercenter players there. And this could be the opportunity to make that swing. You know the shots coming out, you saw the paint shell, a perfect time to work off the back of, but LA Tech still, with this superior weaponry, they can play into the entire chaos of a round a little bit better, but man, did they sacrifice a lot of people to even get this round to even work or look feasible for them. So a little bit awkward of a round for them to say the least, but hey, success is all you're trying to find, and quite frankly, with the gun to be almost picked up, that Guardian won't be carried over, but you can still get some damage done with what you got.
Second round, as expected. But a big loss will mean that you'll have to think twice about what you bring forward into round 3. In defense of the Kentucky Blue, there's no question. Rifles on the board. We have not yet seen C site be tested by LA Tech, so I would anticipate Kentucky would put maybe one player there more specifically towards B, and only one player actually holding on to the objective. I talked about this yesterday, I believe, with you actually, Dallas. Talking about how Haven is so great to defend because you can put 2 players in B site, and in actuality, they're really defending A and C, vice versa. And it can kind of be the same thing here, but considering the architecture, the design, the layout of that B site, you do need that one player actively there, and that's Bury for the side of Kentucky Blue, considering there's been no noise through tree because you've let your player, your Rays, go all the way through. You know it's seen. You can defend this heavy. Wall for 2. Down goes Lazy and Cheaton. Wall gets their 3rd, 4th, and maybe has a chance for an ace, but they do not know what Jurassic is, and because of that, it's a kill back their way, and a 1v2 now, and they just saw Buey's gun. They know Buey's in this corner. The utility is completely absent for a KJ. What can you do? Shoulder spotted, 3K for Jurassic, and it's a 1v1 with Spike locked in the line of sight for the Rays who flanked the whole map.
35 seconds on the clock, a guiding light in 15. You got resources here to fight with. You know Mound's a very difficult fight to take, quite frankly. You see the heads on Mound, and even then, missed bullets is the best thing you could ask for here. No real contention here, no real fights going down. You know somebody's going to be on that corner, and you hear the boom bot, so the swing is made, and the round is won. Jurassic opening up. We've seen respective hero plays from 2 players now, 4K and a 5K. We've actually seen 3 players, we're counting one on that defensive side with an opening 4. It's got to really hurt to know that you did your job almost as best as you could, and you're saying, I just need 4 guys to find one, and they just can't close it out.
When you get so close to a big round 3 win where needed, and almost dominantly so, Wall did everything they could to keep the team involved in that round, Dallas. You needed the team to step up, and Wall was left very much so absent with the rest of the squad not being there around them. That's very unfortunate for Kentucky Blue, and may spell a disastrous straight for LA Tech to continue to move in on this dominant spree. They're now up to 3 kills in this round, 1 against them. And the 2 players that are left on the defense, one of them is completely vacated off to the A side, and the other one's on C with a Sheriff, and good for the 1-2 on a Jeeton. You're still holding back. The weapon's a bit too far to collect, and J-Crew will lock you away from it. But that's why Doug has the utility. Flash around the side, can't swing wide enough though. And we'll have to send out a shock instead. Jurassic. Oh. I mean, just burn it. You're gonna die anyways.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I don't blame you, but good God.
He's in the kitchen sink with it.
Aftershock, ultimate. I'm like Batman. I got a utility belt, and I'm gonna just throw it at you.
Oh my goodness. Ugh. Well, they both start with B. You're a superhero, right? Yeah. My name starts with B. Oh, Batman. Close.
Bleach.
Bat breach.
Good God. 4 rounds, I mean, what real comic can you make it around like that? Didn't have too much to work off of. You were expecting the round to go in the direction of LA Tech, and still, I mean, the execution was a little bit slow, but I mean, quite frankly, they're not really pressured around like that. You don't have to push on the side immediately. You just got to check your corners. I mean, the Sheriff's going to be a little bit dangerous there. That's typically why you see a lot of players go towards the A site to find themselves a long lineup, but regardless, it seems like the C spot is going to be very, very contentious here for LA Tech, because, man, if they dedicate themselves to it, it feels like every single round.
Big stuns and a lot of utility being dumped into the C site. It looks like LA Tech are prior to go ahead and move into the open space they've created for themselves. And Head of Swarm does keep Lazy back, but it's only for a short amount of time. It's the guiding light that'll be your big concern. But with that smoke having gone down, you'll need a little bit more past that. Twisted, good for 1 after losing their teammate of Wall and of Crossfire. It's still a 4 for 4, and the spike that was being teased by Sarko did not go down here, Dallas. This could be rough for LA Tech. They're essentially defending an objective. They have no spike on top of, which means Kentucky can just play for time, and they have to use the lockdown to create the safe space to go for this plant. It's a lot being expended for a measly spike plant. and they only get a 1-for-1 trade on an attempted execute after the fact. There is a player detained, but they know they can't push Buey all the way over towards that link side, and they should have. Lockdown used by Kentucky. J. Crew in a 1v2 can't close it up as Twisted KP almost found an ace of their own and denied it by Buey, but good enough. They'll be happy with the result.
Once again, we already mentioned, I mean, the likes of all that chaos and how much you can really just navigate every single inch of it and still find yourself a result. So knowing that lockdown went down for both sides, it was a little bit more of a safety net for Buey there, knowing that it was available in the field. And we've already seen some good kills coming from that player specifically to actually find one thus far. But what else is invested? We saw the attacking side, lockdown coming in as well, which is a little bit awkward considering that even then you post plant for mound. But what do? You stay on site. You hold those angles. You saw one player just kind of push up, let's see if they can find some kills off site. And well, quite frankly, they did. But I mean, you had that singular smoke, so you really can't blame them too much. LA Tech, though, that's the wild thing. They're playing double controller, and those are really the kind of compositions that feel the strongest in post plants purely because you just keep on cutting off sidelines. Force them to push you and to get something done. Which LA Tech, you're not really going to have to ask them because they're already inking their way towards another site. Once again, not opting for this A side of the map, which is wild. They're sneaking through, looking to push towards B, seeing if the door trigger over towards A and that wall combined back-to-back with the lurking Viper will be enough of an effect. Quite frankly, who knows? I don't think anything's gonna be really found. You're just gonna be watching door on the side while your Viper's got that on check. Easy pick there from J. Crew. Numbers working LA Tech's advantage, and even then while that spike goes down, quite frankly, you have another player going and put the pressure somewhere else in the map to alleviate the detention and find a second off the back of it.
J. Crew's position has been beautifully played. They know they have spike going down on B. That's going to force Kentucky to move in from defender spawn. So prowl for control. Move into that space. Take control of the A site completely. Flank in. The difference maker here is that J. Crew got there too. They're falling back. Sarko will control this space all the way over towards Hut. Not sure why they're doing so, but it's an easy cleanup for the side of LA Tech.
Yeah.
There's no need for Kentucky Blue to go for these fights. They know they've lost it. J. Crew took too much control, found too many kills, and made that way too mismanageable considering how freaking difficult, Dallas, it truly is to retake that B side, especially when the only angle you have to work in from for where your players are currently lying in is trying to go up from top, and there's a KJ there with all of the utility in the world to keep you at bay.
It's another one of those scenarios. I mean, 3 is the magic number, not only when it comes around to relative rounds for a team to kind of have their attendance and be present in the game to a certain extent, but when it comes around to clutch scenarios or just kind of retaking, once again, 3 is that magic number. If you're sitting at 3, when you're sitting in a 2v5, 2v4, any of that kind of stuff is not really too workable. But a 2v3, that's still very much doable. Somebody will overextend, somebody will look for those trades and try to find that. You can have 2 players looking for the trades on site and then find one to go and find that flank watch when you lost so much space so early on. It just doesn't seem possible. We'll see what's going to be done in a round like this. Once again, pushing over towards that C side of the map, another player going ahead and being lost. We see that kind of lurking Viper around the map, not really finding too much of an effect. And honestly, I feel like you're at a stance of the game where you had that Viper spin available. You got to play with the rest of the team and find something.
Sarko, the loose limb, it seems, for the side of LA Tech. They want to prowl in towards B. They'll set up a dark cover so they can fall back, though. And that dark cover will buy some time for the players that are inside of shorts trying to work over towards the A site. This will be a very dangerous spot for LA Tech, and Ponix gonna hit the shots. They hadn't even flicked over to you yet, Ponix. That was a freebie by all accord. And now the site's been overtaken for LA Tech. They know they're facing a Thrifty. They know they're facing a weak-armed and weak-willed Kentucky Blue. And they're gonna take full advantage of it. Utility being dumped with no real pressure behind it. Very loose-sided from the side of Kentucky Blue. And to make matters worse, tons of noise from Ropes Dropped. Let's Lazy swing and tandem with Jurassic on the opposing end. A full house between those two, and LA Tech will rise to 6.
Yeah, plain anti-eco once again coming up from LA Tech, only losing 1 player in the meantime, and nobody really was able to go ahead and pick up that weapon, so you didn't find too much effect off the back of it, and still looking to double down on that A site where you already initially lost a player is actually kind of insane in its own right. But looking at Kentucky Blue and what they get to work with here, this is a chance for them to find some relevancy inside this game. Truly on the best buys in the world, 1 player sitting in the Guardian, 3 with the half armor. But this could be your chance with these 4 ultimates available. Once again, it comes down to the chaos. In what regard can you bring it? How can you set up your team to really capitalize off of it? And are you going to find the position to really kind of follow up on something like that? The Rolling Thunder is going to be really good. Seeker's going to find that information necessary. It comes down to how many players we will die before it ever happens. And speaking of one, there goes the Showstopper. Once again, immediately being cut off the board, which quite frankly feels in these kind of close quarter environments like B specifically extremely strong if you don't overextend yourself.
J. Crew. Down goes Wah. That's all the defensive presence active on the C side. You have one in Link and one now transitioning from defender spawn, but too little too late. You know, early bird gets the worm, and right now Twisted KP unfortunately may just be the worm if it wasn't for Lazy getting flashed by their own utility. Unfortunate that their teammate did them dirty, but Jurassic is good for the refrag, and J-Crew closes and secures the second to last while Sarko finishes the round. 7-1, LA Tech positive guaranteed at halftime, and it doesn't seem like this dominance is going to end anytime soon because Kentucky Blue are forced into yet another Dallas Eco round with only sheriffs.
Yeah, just it's that flip-flop effect where you, quite frankly, are at that point in the game where you say, we only need to win 6 to get map point. We don't need all 12. Just because you're at that point where you're seeing the flip-flop, you're seeing the ecos. And if your anti-ecos are strong, just like we saw in that last time, I mean, there's really no concern put on the field unless you see ultimates just kind of being thrown at you, but that's going to be one of those rifle rounds where it's going to be invested more than likely, or unless you get enough kills initially. But if you look at these trades, you kind of get an idea what's going on there. You got to think that somebody's be laughing around through A. You're going to have these players pushing up, looking for those guns, working off those trades and make sure the sacrifices for a bigger meaning. But consider what we've seen thus far. You do see Kentucky Blue wanting to push off it, but LA Tech has so much resources available. They can just kind of go ahead and push these things and throw out these ultimates to kind of say it doesn't really matter too much. The Seekers especially, not really going to have too much of an impact on the round, where you just guarantee yourself and even clean your anti-eco to try to hold on to as many of these guns as possible, even though it's not too much of a stress considering you haven't lost very many in the first place.
It's true. Push in. Kentucky Blue left with just 2. They did scrape by 1. It's not the worst case scenario. And they'll scrape by yet another. Buey, who had collected a Vandal for themselves, takes down their doppelganger, the oh-so-heated Jeeton. That could be a sign of better things to come. The Nanoswarm to zone Lazy away, but the same thing can't be said for the Util otherwise. And a Rolling Thunder in a 2v3, now left in a 1v2. Buey gets the 1 before falling, and they'll have to slow prowl up here through ramp. Doug gets it, but Jurassic plays the timing perfectly. Where was this LA Tech against their prior opponent of the Niner Esports side? This looks like a completely new team. Maybe it was just a map difference. It's hard to tell, Dallas, but this looks like the team we definitely did not see in the first series. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and once again, I think it comes down to the pacing a little bit. Bind, you're expected to be very fast. Another one of those teams really met the pace that was required from that map and the play style that it asked for, so the requests were not fulfilled. But speaking of a map like this, we talk about those 3 sites once more. Even with the strong entry of having, you know, the Sky Rage, we're not seeing it being fully utilized. You're seeing these individual fights going away once more. I'm expecting Kentucky Blue to kind of spit the suit a little bit faster, executing on these sites, overwhelming the numbers. But when you see these initial picks, these initial fights just going ahead and being taken right off the get-go out towards the open, as you can tell, it feels like Kentucky Blue is just serving LA Tech first bloods on a silver platter.
Twisted KP tries the guiding light for themselves. Honestly, Dallas, it just feels like Kentucky Blue are trying to bring out everyone's individual prowess. And I don't think that's the strategy that's going to work out for them. Wall, he had a good 4K previously. Same thing with Twisted KP, success on a retake on C-Site previously, but it's individuals and individual rounds. It's not the team cohesively doing well. It's one person standing out in round 5 and then the next round doing nothing while it's Wah's turn or something to step into round 6. It has to be fixed. This cannot be a working strategy. Meanwhile, LA Tech has everyone stepping up. Yeah, they lose a duelist on the attempted entry. It's not been Lazy's best series so far, but Lazy doesn't need to do so. Lazy has 4 teammates that do absolutely ridiculously well directly behind them. Sarko is just laying out so much utility. They don't even have a chance to kill before they die because somebody's flanked in. Yeah. 10 assists. Not even to discount the utility that's been placed. LA Tech are a menace of a team and maybe a giant here in the lower bracket, but they definitely couldn't compete against Niner Esports.
Find the weak point and break it.
We know these lower bracket runs are going to happen eventually. I mean, there gets to a point where these great teams have to be cut down at some point or another. And it really comes down to the line that we talked about when we drew during the LCQ. It's kind of top of the barrel, sitting on top of the lid kind of thing. There's only a tiny little barrier between these two, and it really just comes down to who can really make that jump and really provide it necessary. And even better yet, really just draw that line and say, we got to be here consistently. We got to meet this expectation. We have to hold ourselves to it more so than anybody else. So I mean, a good stance regardless across the board. Good plays and good trades here to start things out. But the problem is the kills are going underway once the spike has already been planted. This could be Kentucky Blue's best chance to find themselves a second round. And good God, we know they need it because quite frankly at this point, you could be locked at 9-3, 10-2, even worse, maybe 11-1. And even then with this 10th round looking nearly inevitable, so let's walk and find the kills. You found a round earlier on where you accumulated 4. We're asking for half of that right now.
Showstopper. It has been popped in wall. All they can do is place a dark cover and pray. Right around the corner, it's over. J.Crew stealing the limelight again. Lazy needs the space, J.Crew. You've got at least 1 or 2 kills around up to this stage. Leave the limelight for somebody else. We talked about timeouts though, Dallas. Kentucky Blue needs about 20 of them. This is a ridiculous foray for LA Tech. I'm not even sure. I mentioned that it's a huge advantage for Kentucky Blue being able to watch the match before this for LA Tech. I don't think any of that strategy would help. I think this is a map difference, like you said, the difference in play style, the difference in speed is really giving LA Tech this edge. Maybe the defense turns out differently, but it is getting way too out of hand for the recovery to be super feasible.
I mean, they just know they can rush C every single round because an initial fight comes out towards that mound regardless, and Viper isn't really there to kind of go ahead and choke up at the entryways and kind of go ahead and make these players fragile on their execution. So knowing that in Kentucky Blue with their full double initiator, kind of their little more flex scenario, they're playing more for an aggressive play style, and they just can't really meet that pacing once more. It's kind of like mine that we saw earlier. LA Tech just kind of closing up shop, fighting round after round. They're picking up the pace more so. And sure, Kentucky Blue, they could meet it if they were on the attacking side, but they're not. They started off on defense, and they had a really bad hell dealt to them because they really can't retake these sites. They can't engage. They're not using their utility to the full effectiveness to find these early kills, and it feels like they're just kind of raw picking way too many fights to lose these first bloods of them. Lazy pushing out. We see the kills going away once more. A half being concluded at 11-1. LA Tech, they only need the pistol in the one afterwards to just say this thing's over with, and they go next.
Switching sides.
LA Tech, they won before, they dominated, and they're showing they could do it again after the big loss they've had. It's about as good as you can ask for, and Dallas, it seems like the Lotus Curse has once again come true. It hasn't been the same case for every map, I'll point out, but for SEL, or so every league I should say, but for SEL, Lotus has been predominantly a one-sided affair.
Yeah.
And it's kind of shocking to say so because I kind of expect every league to turn out that way, but we've seen it in high school, we've seen it in opposing collegiate leagues in different divisions, and it has never been so one-sided as it's been here in the SEL. We're just an outlier in the scene, apparently. Even though it's just the same collegiate, it's turning into this ridiculous meme for the league, and I hope it stays forever. Please stop picking Lotus if you're not 100% confident in the dominant victory you'll get.
Yeah, but Lotus, I feel like, is a very trivial map to look at because when we do see those rare occurrences of like teams really exchanging blows on this map, it's like watching an anime fight. It's like Zeus and Odin going at it fist to fist. It is so entertaining to watch because you know these teams are really able to just put every single asset of this map together to utilize to the fullest extent. And it's amazing. But you do see these kinds of games happen as a lot for a result of that. They're expecting, they think they look like Naruto and Sasuke in their heads when really they're just two kids out in the backyard, fighting with lightsabers. It's just like, what's going on here? So, I mean, it is what it is. The Kentucky Blue, they still have a little bit of a chance. They're sitting at 3 players standing. They got the pistol rounds to say, hey, some breathing room. Let's go. They're still a long way. I mean, there is a light. Sure, it looks like a candle flame right now, but there is a light at the tunnel if you can really go the distance.
The belief, it can be there. The copium absolutely is there. But this is another point where mental is going to play a big part of it. LA Tech, I said, they're going to come out of this one. They're going to be heated. They were. You said, not the answer. You sent me their duelists, all 5 duelists. Jean came out with an ace, like right at the beginning of the game. That's your KJ. J.Crew and Jurassic have done like 3 times more than their duelist has. Everyone came out with this just heated position for LA Tech. And unfortunately, having all that desire, all that fuel right at the very beginning of the game, now for the second half, it's going to be a lot harder to utilize because you have to essentially be forced to dictate into the pace of what Kentucky Blue are doing. So it's harder to stay heated. You're going to that flame is going to die out infinitely quicker. And we already see it trying to be attempted to stay alive in this first one, in the second round, I should say, because they just rush in towards tree and they pay the price with all 4 dying.
Well, this round at least is going their direction, thankfully. Already 4 players still standing in the post-plant scenario. Jeeton's probably just going to go ahead and hug that door and maybe just try to die to spike because it'll overextend to that point. But even then, I don't know if that's really going to happen. Knowing that we're seeing it slow and steady, you know the players are probably overextended. They're hungry for these kills. They have to find this confidence. They got to get a taste of blood to understand really what they're capable of doing. But in a point like this is really difficult. And even a guiding light, they can either cue the wolves to start hunting, or it could do exactly that. There's no second option. You see them. You see what they're going for. They don't care about what guns they lose in the meantime. Somebody can pick up what's dropped if it's a little more important. The Phantom being the head honcho of that entire squad and arsenal, you're going to want to make sure that carries over to the next.
Gun here.
11-3. Kentucky Blue take the first 2 as expected, and LA Tech will fall apart in that second round, which is as expected. We did see some variations of that in our first series of the day with LA Tech versus Niner Esports, but it wasn't enough to change the pacing of the game, especially when we saw Niner Esports just start to walk away with it in the end of the first half in its continuation, assuredly, into the second. LA Tech, though, with only 2 rounds needed to come away with a win, can really just bide their time. They still have 8 rounds of buffer, and they're engaging quickly. Paranoia around the corner. They should have gone down much sooner. Twisted KP somehow surviving for way too long in that engagement. Paint Shell from Lazy gets away with a kill, and it's somehow
okay. Oh my God.
Getting away with 2 more to make that way too costly of a round for LA Tech despite the win. But it doesn't freaking matter, dude. They're at 12. They're at 12. They've still got 8 rounds, no 9 rounds now, a buffer room.
They can throw 6 and say we get a 5 for the last 3. I mean, guaranteed. It's just
They can stack up 9K credits to just hold on to.
It's like the show match I mentioned earlier, man. The Cash App, infinite money around. 16 operators in spawn, 12 Odins, and a full kit to work with. It's just, I don't know. It is kind of wild looking at how this game's gone thus far. LA Tech obviously just being a force to be reckoned with on the attacking side, and especially in these post plants, you got to look at the stances. Yeah, the Viper and the KJ together, going ahead and locking in that C site. I mean, you have every single piece of utility to make sure this site is absolutely atrocious to get through, and there you go. You see it? A gorgeous shot by Point, just dragging down the mouse of whiplash speed to get that thing off at their feet. But regardless, you still find an exchange to some extent, and that could be your saving grace, quite frankly. All the Viper walls now dropped. Orb isn't in play anymore. It purely comes down to the KJ. But problem is, the KJ's Jeeton, who found an ace in the very first round, and they close it out with a darn near close one.
This could be a 3K for Jeeton. Sarko working in from Mount, opened the opportunities for this round. Jeeton getting the 2 is good, but you needed that backwards pressure to force those players at the opening of C to step further into the objective, get into Jeeton's line of sight. But it still won't matter. Twisted, great shot to the head of Jeeton, but the refract from Jurassic is clean. Jeeton and Jurassic were a beautiful duo that LA Tech desperately needed here in the SCL, and it was noticeably absent in our first series, and they found their momentum, they found their edge, and they rode it to victory for the second.
Yeah, I mean, big sense here from the likes of Kentucky. Obviously, the game didn't go in their direction. I mean, we really can't do too much to kind of compliment them in regards to this game specifically. But over the course of the season, I mean, I got to say with the expectations, I like to go ahead and look at records, see how teams are doing, get the little checkups, kind of figure out what's going on there. I could bring stats into the equation if Valorant had an open API. But, I mean, all things considered besides that, I mean, still, you got to work with what you see. And the numbers, the records, and still kind of looking at Kentucky and what they've done, we've seen some teams have some outstanding stories in the season. And Kentucky's one of those you can kind of go ahead and create a node to, knowing that they were 1-4 in the regular. I guarantee you, if anybody was looking at the sheet, they'd cut them out and say, look, this is one of those teams that are just kind of being doomed to get out of this pretty darn early. Maybe not even make it past last chance qualifier, but be part of those few remaining teams. Still have a couple rounds in the bottom bracket where they've made it through in this and reached this kind of point where you're reaching quarterfinals. You're saying that is damn good for a season for a team like that. And you know that you've had that growth there. You know you've made those strides. It obviously just seems like Lotus, and whenever you face higher end teams and these kind of specialist oriented maps, you need to make sure to kind of fit that formula. You got to take it in. You got to embrace it a little bit. There is some chance of leniency. There is some divergencies that can be made. Problem is, they're double controllers there for a reason. It's not at that point, it doesn't come down to agents. It comes down more to what roles are necessary. And when you make that double investment into initiator, you got to have a little bit more of a versatile kit rather than just flashes.
Yeah, there was a lot on the line for both of these teams, and LA Tech just showed that they are willing to do much more for the end result that they were hoping for. I will point out, You mentioned Kentucky had a really tough time in the mainstay season. They break out, managed to get into playoffs like nobody anticipated them to do so, and they got a really rough first game, right? Florida Orange is a ridiculously good team, and they're a team that nobody really wants to have to face off against. They get sent down as expected from that result, but the expectations were on the line for Texas Tech, who were expected to win that, and they didn't. It was a big upset by Kentucky, who had already made plenty of upsets to the point into the section of getting into playoffs in our qualifiers. So I've been very impressed with what they've been bringing to the table. And I think with a little bit more time and some more practices and some more scrims and, realizing what they can truly be capable of, they can be contenders for next season of SEL, because there will be a next season of SEL. And we'll gladly have you back for it. So unfortunately with that, Kentucky is out of this season of the SEL, and LA Tech, despite their major loss against Niner Esports on buying just earlier today, pull off a ridiculously solid performance on our second map of Lotus, and they will send themselves through into the lower side of our bracket for playoffs, and they will stay here for SEL for just a little bit longer, if not all the way. We'll have to see coming up next week with more. Stay tuned here for the SEL.